Like it or not, the war in Ukraine has morphed into a war in everything but name between the West and Russia. The US and Europe have pumped Ukraine with money and advanced weapons while unleashing the mother of all sanctions against Russia. And yet so far, both American and European money and weapons have not stopped the Russians from taking control of most of Donbass and 20% of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Western sanctions are inflicting greater harm on the US and European economies than on the Russian economy. Why hasn't the West, with its technological economic might, knocked out Russia, whose economy is smaller than that of Italy, and that the late John McCain derisively called a gas station masquerading as a country? What is it about the Russian economy that makes it so resilient to economic sanctions? Has the West exhausted all its options, or has it still got something up its sleeve? Hi, I'm David Wu, a former Wall Street strategist with a 20-year track record of making actionable predictions about major global change. Welcome to The Money Game, where I take on groupthink, propaganda, and conspiracy theories in my critical analysis of markets, economics, and politics. Before we start, click subscribe and hit the bell button so that you will be notified when a new video comes out. The classic cost and benefit analysis is a useful framework for comparing alternative policy actions and evaluating policy decisions. A good policy is usually one that has benefits that outweigh the costs and has the highest benefit to cost ratio. There is no doubt that the costs of the economic sanctions against Russia are piling up. The sanctions have driven up the prices of necessities from food to energy around the world. The UN said that millions of people are already facing hunger and destitution. The global price shock, by forcing central banks to accelerate interest rate increases, is pushing the world economy to the edge of a recession that will likely result in millions of job losses. The costs of the sanctions against Russia are massive and are mainly borne by the poor and people who are far away from the conflict and have no or little interest in the outcome of the war. Sanctions were expected to weaken Russia economically to such a degree that its military activities in Ukraine will stop or at least slow significantly. But 4 months into these sanctions, their objective remains largely elusive and has mainly failed. So far, the only tangible piece of evidence that the sanctions are having any impact at all is the big discount of Russian oil price relative to the international price, meaning that Russia can only sell its oil by offering it at a lower price. Russian crude oil price is trading at a $35 a barrel discount to the Brent crude oil price. However, given how much oil price has gone up as a result of the sanctions, even at the discounted price, Russia is still getting more money for every barrel of oil than it did a year ago. As a result, Russian export revenue to Europe is still higher than where it was a year ago. Meanwhile, Russian exports to China, its largest trading partner, skyrocketed in June. While Russian exports have held up despite the sanctions, Russian imports have collapsed. As a result, the Russian current account surplus hit an all-time high in the second quarter. This is the main reason why the ruble has been the strongest currency in the world this year, going up 35% against the euro and 25% against the US dollar. Sanctions on Russian imports are designed to limit Russia's ability to secure critical supplies and equipment like advanced semiconductors. The fact that Russian motor vehicle production is down 75% year to date is evidence that at least these are working. However, restricting Russia's ability to import what it needs also creates room for import substitution, meaning that it encourages Russian consumers and companies to purchase domestically produced goods and services. The sanctions have in fact been great business for many Russian domestic companies and manufacturers. This is probably the reason why Russian manufacturing and services have recovered so quickly. In June, the purchasing managers' indices for both sectors are back to expansionary levels. Unintentionally, the sanctions, by forcing the Russians to spend their money at home, are actually propping up the Russian economy. The fact that the Russian unemployment rate fell to just 3.9% in June, its all-time low, is consistent with the effects of import substitution that I'm talking about. Also consistent with import substitution is the fact that Russian inflation has returned to norm following the initial shock. Easing inflation suggests that there is no major shortage of goods. The bottom line is that the massive Russian economic contraction that the architects of these sanctions in Washington and Brussels have failed to materialize. But what about the financial costs of the war? Surely it's stretching Russia's public finances to its limit. 2022 has been a bumper year for Russian government revenue, in large part thanks to high energy prices. The cumulative revenue year to date is up 25% compared to last year. Meanwhile, it would seem that Russia's war strategy is at least partly designed to keep the cost down. This may be why the prediction of a general mobilization of the Russian population has not materialized either, and Putin seems to be content with incremental gains on the battlefield. As a result, the latest public finance data suggests that Russia is still running a budget surplus that's even greater than 2021. Wow, how can this be? The reality is that sanctions are effective mainly against poorly managed economies. The Russian economy is anything but poorly managed. America has large twin deficits. Russia has large twin surpluses that place it in a league of its own for a country with a population of 150 million people. Russia's current account surplus and fiscal surplus are providing Russia with a cushion to withstand sanctions. It is very clear that the West did not take this into account when they embarked on their war of economic attrition. The truth is that the West never gave much recognition to Putin for Russia's economic progress since he took power. Yet the truth is that real per capita GDP doubled since he succeeded Boris Yeltsin in 2000. As you can see on this chart, this performance compares well even against the fast growers among middle-income countries like Turkey and Poland. What has made this achievement even more remarkable is the fact that Russia did this without taking on debt. Today, Russia has one of the lowest public debt to GDP ratios in the world, just shy of 20%. This compares with the US debt to GDP ratio of 120%. Lower debt means the Russian government can devote more of its revenue to productive activities and strategic goals than to paying interest on its debt. With inflation and inflation expectations going up around the world, one thing is clear. Russia's low public debt burden will increasingly become a strategic advantage vis-a-vis its adversary in the years to come. But the West is not finished yet. As I've said in my previous video, Biden has gone too deep into this war to be able to quit without serious consequences for himself and for his party. The US has stopped importing Russian oil and frozen Russia's massive foreign assets. So what else can it do? Over the past few weeks, Washington has been floating a new plan, a plan to cap a Russian oil price. The basic idea is to form a buyer cartel that will only pay for Russian oil at $40 a barrel. Washington is hoping that this will help ease inflationary pressure at home and impoverish the Russian economy at the same time. The problem with the plan is that it relies on many assumptions that all have to come true at the same time. One, it will require all countries, including China and India, to get on board. Two, it would require an explicit agreement among all members of the buyer cartel on how much cheap Russian oil each country will get. Three, it will require no cheating among the cartel members, yet the incentive to cheat will be very great given that at $40 a barrel there will be massive excess demand for Russian oil. Four, it will require that India, China, and Russia do not enter into what would be a highly lucrative business for insuring and reinsuring cargoes carrying Russian oil. Finally, it will require cooperation from Russia. Even if Russia were to decide to suspend its oil export for just a week, oil price will probably skyrocket, placing great strains on the cartel. I don't think you have to be a genius to realize that this plan is full of wishful thinking and holes. This comes as no surprise as the sanctions war that the West has unleashed on Russia has been based on wishful thinking rather than facts and logic from the very start. From a cost-benefit perspective, the sanctions make no sense for the West. The costs are too high and the benefits too low. Of course, politicians who make these decisions do not always think in terms of the cost-benefit analysis for the country they govern, but in terms of the cost-benefit analysis for themselves. In social science and business, this is called the principal-agent problem that arises when the incentives between the agent and the principal are not perfectly aligned. One of the most important lessons we've learned in this war so far is that the principal-agent problem is at least as big a problem in democracies than in authoritarian regimes. If you got something out of this program, I would appreciate if you were to hit like and subscribe to my free YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about my investment strategy, come basically check us out at davidwuunbound.com. Thank you for listening.